What are your thoughts about anarchism? So I talked quite a bit. He'll be here in a few days, actually, Michael Malice, about ideas of anarchy. And his idea, or the idea of anarchists, is that any amount of government will eventually become the very kind of thing that you're referring to. So there's almost no way to have a government that doesn't then try to monopolize power, money, and all those kinds of things. Do you think it's possible to have a government sort of on that spectrum of like anarchy, maybe libertarianism? I'm not sure how exactly the spectrum goes, but where you have a small government that protects the liberty and property rights and those kinds of things and doesn't expand to then also control the monetary system and all those other things. Is it possible?
Agreed completely. It was not possible until Satoshi Nakamoto. So for the first time in history, we have a money that cannot be monopolized, cannot be corrupted, cannot be changed, cannot be weaponized, frankly. Our current monetary system is weaponized by those who can print money against those who cannot. And I think when you have, at the heart of every modern economy, which even we could say the US, we pride ourselves as free market capitalists. We outcompeted communism in the 20th century. We think that this is the superior model. Most business people will tell you that the free market is the best allocator of resources, all of these things. But what we have at the heart of every modern economy, including the US, is an anti-capitalistic institution, which is the central bank. The temptation to monopolize money throughout all of history has been too strong for anyone to resist. So even benevolent, quote unquote, dictators that have taken over, many dictators have inherited, say, an inflationary regime where society's coming apart because someone was clipping the coins or someone was printing too much money, and they'll commit to going back to a hard money standard. So they'll keep society on a gold standard, for instance, such that they cannot violate the money to benefit themselves. But inevitably over time, because it is a political institution, there's an incentive there, right? For again, to get something for nothing, to spend more than you're making through tax revenues. And with that incentive, people typically ultimately end up pursuing that inflationary path. So we get deeper into that about inflation is a term that we've been conditioned to think today is just something normal, that prices just go up and then it's pertinent to a healthy economy, but it's actually, if you look at it from real first principles, it is just theft integrated into the money. It's a technology backdoor is another way to think about it. You wouldn't buy a cell phone knowing that someone could siphon your data off of your private calls and sell it into the market. Now, I know we do that with a lot of social media stuff today, and that's something else we can get into, but you wouldn't do it willingly, right? You would prefer that your cell phone and your data was monetized by you, or if you're going to sell it, you would be able to selectively sell it. Inflation is that. It's similar. It's a tech backdoor. So it's a money that only a few people can siphon value off of surreptitiously, typically slowly, but eventually, as we've seen throughout history, that slowly builds up into a rapidly and then causes the monetary system to collapse.
Do you think there's a benefit to inflation? Possibly. So when you have perfect information, but perhaps you don't need inflation. Perhaps it is purely theft. But I think of inflation as like the snooze button on the alarm. Like you just, so if you have a hard standard, you better wake up when the alarm rings. But, all of us kind of like probably shouldn't, but use the snooze button. It's like, okay, well, 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes. And then you're saying there's naturally a slippery slope where it becomes a drug that you fall in love with and you abuse. That's right. But nevertheless, the usefulness of the snooze button is that you don't know how you'll be actually feeling when the alarm rings. You might be able to ready to pop up, or you might be like, you really need those few more minutes, like to psychologically get yourself out of bed. This metaphor is just not working at all. But
no.
But do you think there's a use to inflation sometimes from like an economics perspective?
I think the drug metaphor is a little more apt in that inflation does provide an immediately stimulative effect when used early on. So, but what it's doing is again, we talk about the balance between incentives and disincentives, right? That being necessary for a system to function properly. If with inflation, you're essentially giving the people that can print money a way to dampen the disincentives they face. So it destroys feedback loops, I guess you might say. And another way to look at this is using inflation, using quantitative easing, you can decrease short-term volatility in the marketplace. So the market is basically this form of free exchange that's trying to zero in on the best ideas. And the ideas are those that are most fit to reality, to satisfying the most wants. It's going to overshoot, it's going to undershoot. You have these little business cycles. But when it's undershooting and you're experiencing business recession, in a capitalist environment, the market needs to clear that malinvestment, that misallocation of capital. That means someone made a bet on a certain idea that it would satisfy wants in a particular way, and that bet did not pan out. If you then paper over the losses that business is creating, you're now delaying and exacerbating the volatility that idea created. So this is kind of a Talebian concept where you can dampen short-run volatility, but volatility is truth. Volatility is us matching our ideas to reality, right? We're constantly, again, overshooting and undershooting. So if you delay volatility, you're just amplifying it and exacerbating it in the long run. And that's what central bank is doing. The central bank mandate is low unemployment and low and expected inflation, basically. And so they're trying to achieve economic growth in a stable way, quote unquote stable way. This is their ostensible purpose. And that's just not possible. Growth is an inherently unstable process.